to this week's episode of Coffee with Keiko. My name is Kyla, your host, and here I am with my coffee and my friend Keiko here. And you might notice that this week we have a different face joining us. My normal co-host Paige, she is out. She's got some work stuff going on, but we have amazing guest Andrew is joining us. And Andrew, you want to say a little bit about your background? Because Andrew, fun fact, is not in the biology realm as far as whales go.
I am not. Thanks for having me on, Kyla.
Of
I've been looking
course.
forward to this for weeks. Here with my coffee today, less exciting mug, and I don't have an orca in my room. Um, my name's Andrew. I'm in automotive marketing with a background in motorsports and was a racing driver for most of my life until a few years ago. And just very passionate about learning new subjects. And I always love our chats, Kyla. I always feel like I learn something new.
Yeah, I mean, if you're joining here for the first time, I'm hosting this podcast because I'm a naturalist in the Pacific Northwest. That's where a lot of my knowledge and training in school has come from, and I really love the whales and wildlife here. But with this podcast, we've really gone global. We kind of talk about anything or everything that the guest wants to talk about. So we might be talking about beaked whales in Antarctica. We might be talking about killer whales in the Pacific Northwest, whatever Andrew wants to do. But we are doing something a little bit different this episode, in which we're going to play a game. And you all can follow along with it. It's going to be a game where you have to guess if a species that I show is a dolphin or not a dolphin. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of what constitutes a whale being a dolphin or not a dolphin. Sound good?
Amazing. I'm
Alrighty.
ready.
So this is going to be species number one. Andrew, can you tell us, is this a dolphin or is it not a dolphin?
It's a dolphin, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ding, ding,
I'm doing
ding.
so
Wait.
good.
Those are some Hawaiian spinner dolphins. And as we see with the slideshow here, we're going to have the question is it a dolphin? We're going to have the images of the said species. And then all of these images are provided by Blue Tide Project, which is her logo at the bottom of the corner. And so if you like any of the images or species that we end up going through today, check out Blue Tide Project because her stickers are amazing. Okay, next species. Andrew, dolphin or not a dolphin?
I need a second. I know we just talked about this. This is not a dolphin. Oh, okay. It is a dolphin. Riso's dolphin? Oh my gosh. And why is the poor fella just all scratched up too?
They communicate a lot with their teeth. Most dolphin species do communicate with their teeth, and they called them rake marks, where they like kind of throw their teeth at each other, and it leaves this surface level scar on their skin. But the Rhesus dolphins, they have this gray colored skin, and they have this dynamic where the males oftentimes are sparring with each other or fight with each other. So they get more white markings on them over the time. So the older males can be almost white in coloration from all of the tooth rake scars, while the females are
Oh,
usually more that gray color where you just see some scars on it, like this one. But as you can see, even though it's a dolphin, it doesn't have the classic beak, right? So the previous species
interesting.
has the long beak that most people think about with dolphins. This one does not, but it is still in that dolphin group.
That is so fascinating.
All right, your next species, Andrew, is this a dolphin?
There's no way that's a dolphin.
You are correct. It is not a
Oh my
dolphin, it
gosh.
is a beluga whale.
Amazing. I love belugas too.
Oh, so you
So
know this one. Perfect.
I do, except because I've always loved their little forehead on top too. It's so cute.
You ready for this one?
Okay, now this one's an orca. Has to
Yes.
be. So I'm going to say no, it is not a dolphin. An orca is a dolphin?
An orca is a dolphin.
Oh, that is so fascinating. Okay,
They are
okay.
the largest species of oceanic dolphin.
Really?
hmm But
This is
this
so
is one of the
cool.
reasons I wanted to do this game is actually because of the killer whale. This is one of the leading species that causes this confusion about what even a dolphin is and what a whale even is. And so, well, I'll show you the graphic at the end of this, but the saying goes, all dolphins are whales, not all whales are dolphins. Orcas, they are a whale, and they are a dolphin. So some people are like, it's called a killer whale, but they're not actually whales. They are whales. They are a type of toothed whale.
Fascinating. Okay.
All right, this is a tricky one. Dolphin or not a dolphin?
See, it's got the nose. It has to be a dolphin.
It is not a dolphin.
I am so bad at this game. A shepherd's beaked whale.
They are deep sea, deep water species that rarely come close to shore, so they're not very commonly
Oh,
seen, and very little is known about most of the species of beaked whales. So it's
fascinating.
it's really, I mean, don't feel bad you got this one wrong because most people have never heard of a beaked whale in their life.
It looks beautiful. I want to learn more about these suckers now.
All right, dolphin or not a dolphin?
See, I feel like this is a trick now. Because now I have this preconception of what a dolphin looks like. I'm going dolphin. That one's a dolphin. Okay. So it's a whale.
I mean, don't
So
feel too bad. I kind of made the order of these species to purposely mess with you, and it seems like it's working very well.
it's doing a really good job, Kyla. What is, oh my gosh, look at how high its mouth is.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this
That's
is a
fascinating.
sei whale. So this is one of the baleen whales. So it's not a toothed whale at all. So instead of teeth to grab and bite things, it has the plates of baleen that hang down from its upper jaw, and which it uses to open that mouth to engulf a mouthful of small critters like krill or small fish. And the baleen essentially allows them to push the water out of their mouth, and the baleen kind of acts as a filter or a net or a trap, and anything bigger than the spaces between each individual baleen plate is stuck on the inside of the mouth. So they don't have to swallow a bunch of seawater every time they take a gulp of food. And you can kind of see in
What?
this drawing, do you see those like lines on the underneath the chin and like to the belly?
Right.
Those are the ventral pleats, so those expand out when they are going to engulf a mouthful of food.
And what's the purpose of them expanding, anyways? Is
So
it to
that they
help?
can fully like put their mouth around a massive, say, bait ball of forage fish, like the small little fish like herring or sardines or krill or whatever they want to eat. They have to expend a lot of energy to essentially lunge forward at fish or food that they want to eat before they can disperse and swim away. And so it's kind of like get your bang for your buck. You want to get as much food and much mouthful as you can so you can get that energy that you need to then be able to
Wow.
lunge forward.
I mean, this thing is like a vacuum cleaner, it seems like, just like with that, that's not a bad analogy. It's just an eating up as much as possible. That is so cool. What a
Yes,
fascinating whale,
the more
not dolphin.
commonly known species that look like this, if you've ever heard of a blue whale, a fin whale, a minke whale, they have a
Right.
very similar body plan. But a sei whale, it's while it's a relative, it's lesser known, which is why it's kind of cool to have this guy up here.
How fascinating.
Alrighty, dolphin or not a dolphin?
This one's got to be a dolphin. So then the porpoise is a porpoise a whale? Oh my
A
gosh.
A
Okay.
porpoise is a type of toothed whale. So just like how we
Okay.
have the oceanic dolphin family, or we have the beaked whale family, we have the porpoise family. So it's a family within the toothed whales.
Okay. That's fascinating. It's very cute, by the way.
It is very cute.
Whoa, what is this? Oh my gosh. That is so cool. This is a dolphin. This one has to be a dolphin.
Yay! It is indeed a
Killed
dolphin.
it. Hector's dolphin. Who is Hector? Oh my gosh.
That's a great question. A lot of these species are named after researchers that have either helped describe the species or been somewhat involved in the science advanced understanding of that species. So Hector is going to be someone's last name. Who Hector is, I don't know, but it's Hector's dolphin.
Wow.
Okay, dolphin or not a dolphin?
I'm gonna go dolphin.
That's correct.
Look at me, guys. Little pat on the back there.
So short fin
Wow.
pilot whale, you guessed dolphin. Most people would say not a dolphin because you look at that and kind of, as we've shown, it doesn't have that long beak, and
Right.
their common name is whale, long-finned pilot whale. And there's actually been scenarios of a close relative of the long-finned pilot whale called the false killer whale that
Okay.
has made hybrids with bottlenose dolphins in captivity. So it's like a false killer whale plus a bottlenose dolphin baby. And the nickname for that is a wholphin, a whale plus a dolphin, which makes it seem like the false killer whale or the long-finned pilot whale aren't dolphins, but both of them are in the dolphin family.
That's fascinating. Okay. And it was called a false killer whale. Is that what you said
A false
earlier?
killer whale. It looks fairly
Wow.
similar to the long-finned pilot whale, and both of these species are in the group called blackfish. Have you heard of blackfish?
I haven't. What is a blackfish?
It is basically any of these dolphin species that are dark in color and black and don't really have that beak that we usually think about when we think about a dolphin. So, killer whale, long fin pilot whale, short fin pilot whale, melon headed whale, and false killer whale are all, and pygmy killer whale. They're all kind of this body plan of dark color, not a big beak. And so they are all considered to be kind of this nicknamed blackfish. And so a lot of people know
Oh.
about blackfish being a nickname for killer whales because of the documentary Blackfish that was aired on Netflix that was about essentially the morality of keeping them in captivity. But a lot of people, while they know that the nickname for orcas are blackfish and they know that orcas are dolphins, they don't know that their close relatives are these pilot whales and false killer whales and melon-headed whales, and that all these species are also in the dolphin family and also called blackfish.
That is so fascinating. Okay.
Next species, dolphin or not a dolphin?
That's not a dolphin, surely.
That is true. Good job.
So good at
This
this.
is another species that's really not known very well. It's called a pygmy sperm whale. So a lot of people have heard of the big sperm whale, but close relatives there are pygmy and dwarf sperm whale, and they have something that's called a false gill. It's not actually a gill. It is just coloration. It's just like they have a black line on the backside of their head, but it looks like a gill, so that's why it looks so kind of silly looking.
How fascinating. It almost looks like it's wearing glasses right now. This one has to be a dolphin, right? I mean, it's not.
It's one of those beaked whales again.
Oh my gosh, these things trip me up. Okay, strap-toothed beaked whale. This is a dolphin.
Yes, these are hourglass dolphins.
Wow. Why is there a reason behind why they're called an hourglass dolphin?
Look at the coloration along their sides.
Oh, I'll be dang. Kind of looks like one. How cool.
Yeah. And then that is the game. And
Oh my
honestly,
gosh.
I'll go back and I can include a Andrew score if you want. I wasn't really keeping track, but I think you got a good handful of them right, and we had a lot of great discussion.
You know what? If it's like D, it's like D for done. I'll take 60%. I'm probably less than that. I probably got half of them right. Oh
What's
well.
what's the other saying? Like D's get degrees.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So this is one of those family trees, the phylogenetics that I was talking to you about, where this would be the common ancestor to all whales. And then we early on we had a split over here. And so these are the baleen whale species. And so there's not very many species of baleen whales. There's only, as you can see, 15 of them. And
Right.
these are the ones that don't have teeth, that they're kind of skim feeding or doing the lunge feeding, getting all the small krill and small fish and things like that. And there's only four main lineages. And then on the other side, at the what I've circled in red, these are the toothed whales. So this very first ancient lineage, where it has one species and then two species, this is the one living species of sperm whale. And then the Kojidae, those are the two related species of the pygmy sperm whale and the dwarf sperm whale, which you just saw. So that together, these two sister groups Physeteridae and Cogidae, they're two separate lineages, but they're sister groups, and together they make a monophyletic group. So this is kind of the same idea as you and your brother and your mom. It's like you can take all three species, and that in itself includes an ancestor and all of their descendants. So going along, you were asking about oceanic dolphins. So that's here.
Yes.
It says Delphinidae, and there's the 38 species.
Seems like a lot of
It
species.
is a lot of species. But if there's oceanic dolphins, the opposite of that is going to be the river dolphins. So oceanic dolphins,
Okay.
all 38 species, make up one lineage, one monophyletic group. River dolphins are kind of confusing because they are not in the Delphinidae family where we get the word dolphin from, and they themselves are separate lineages. River dolphins aren't a monophyletic group. So we have three separate lineages for four different species for river dolphins. And none of them are actually in the Delphinidae family. So
That is cool.
they're called dolphins because they have that long beak that, like I said, people associate with that dolphin body plan. But that's what a case of what we call convergent evolution, where we have multiple different species evolving the same body plan or the same trait because it's efficient and it helps with survival in that habitat, not because they're actually related. I mean, they're all toothed whales, but they're not all in the dolphin family.
How fascinating. So, and they all look so different from each other, like
And
physically, even though they might have the long beak. That is so interesting.
And they also have, like, I mean, this is just showing one species for each family, kind of like that kind of represents it. So, like with the Delphinidae, it's showing a bottlenose dolphin. It's not showing a pilot whale because, like, most people don't think of pilot whales as dolphins. They think of bottlenose dolphins as dolphins, you know?
Right. Oh, this is cool.
The beaked whales we talked about, that's the Ziphidae. That's right here. That's these 24 species. So they're their own separate lineage. And then the porpoises, right here, they're Phocinidae. So there's seven species of porpoise. And they are actually in a sister group. They're in a monophyletic group with the Monodontidae, which are narwhals and belugas.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, this is cool. Okay, I'm sorry. You said it was a narwhal and a beluga are related?
Mm-hmm.
Is the mon? Wow.
Yeah, the
Okay.
beluga and narwhals are each other's most closest relatives. And then their next closest relatives is the porpoise family. And then so we just kind of keep how these phylogenetic trees are organized. We kind of just keep expanding out and going back in time for relatedness. So if belugas, narwhals, closest relatives to each other, they're both in the Monodontidae family, then they are equally related to all of those porpoise, seven species of porpoise, and then you expand that out, and then next relatedness is with the 38 species of oceanic dolphin. Go back in time more. Next closest relatives are two of the three lineages of the river dolphins, and then so on and so forth, as you can kind of gather from the figure.
Right. See, again, my simple minds would never have associated, I'm not to go back on it again, the narwhal and beluga being related. Again, just like visually, it seems like they're so different. Again, for my simple mind. This is so cool.
Give
Okay.
yourself credit. There's a lot of this stuff that like I didn't know until it was my entire life. So
And so out of curiosity, how old are whales or dolphins?
the common ancestor to modern day hippos, the common ancestor to modern day whales, they diverged, evolved around 55 million years ago. So this graphic is showing that whales have existed for approximately 55 million years. But the very first whale didn't really look like a whale, it looked more like a furry hippo.
And was it swimming around in the ocean?
It's not in the ocean. The very first whales, since they evolved from land animals, they evolved from hoofed animals. They originally started out on land, and this kind of first whale species is thought to kind of like look small, live in shallow freshwater, and so they started to have like their nose on more on the top of their not like snout, and they had kind of more eyes on the top of their head, kind of think about like a hippo. So they would kind of just like hang out in shallow water with their nose and eyes above the waterline like hippos. And
Right.
but they were carnivores. They had teeth and they ate fish. And through millions of years, eventually that weird hoofed animal hippo dog looking thing that existed 53 million years ago, they became more and more and more adapted over the water through until we, get to our modern day whale form. So the first baleen whales, the ones that have those big mouths that don't have teeth, those didn't exist until about 23 million years ago. So the first 30 million years of whale evolution were just toothed whales. Like one of them was called the Basilosaurid. So saurid, you'd think dinosaur. And
Right.
because off of the skeleton, researchers who uncovered the skeletons originally thought it was a dinosaur. And then they realized because of a specialized ear bone that it was actually in the whale family. And so that's how paleontologists, that's the word, that's how paleontologists have been able to track the whale lineage from modern day whales to 55 million years ago is because every single species has this very unique ear bone.
I had no idea. And that's so fascinating that that's sort of like their telltale sign as well. And out of curiosity, so with all these different species of the world, obviously a handful of them probably come in contact with each other every now and then, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, in the wild. They probably don't understand what each other are saying, correct? With their because they can't speak to their fellow whales. There's packs. Is that the right way of saying it? I'd imagine they have some sort of form of communication. Can other species of whale or dolphins understand, hey, that's a whale or dolphin? I just don't know what they're saying. Just as I don't know French, I couldn't understand somebody from France, even though I understand they're human.
I mean, as long as we've had a microphone, as long as we've had a computer, we've been recording animals and recording their types of sounds they make and trying to correlate that with specific behavior or specific situations to try to understand ourselves what the different calls might mean. Um,
Right.
and but your question is more like, can they understand each other? And that is a much harder question to answer because
Okay.
then we have to kind of get into the brain of a living whale and be like, are they responding to the different calls that a harbor porpoise might be making or that a humpback whale might be like? Are they responding to the so-called language of the other species to act in a way that they actually understand it? So there's been hesitancy in the research world to label anything that a whale does as language simply because for the longest time anthropologists have considered language to be a solely human trait, and it's hard to prove that animals have words that then can be organized into a sentence, and if you organize the words in a different order then it changes the meaning of the sentence. Like that's how we kind of define language. So
Oh, I see.
my favorite example of like trying to understand kind of the complexity of their language was actually an example with an acoustics lab here in the US. They had some captive dolphins and they had a panel so that when the dolphin pushed the button and made one sound, they would get a ball. So if they wanted to play with a ball, they'd push the button and make the ball sound and they would get a ball. And if they wanted to play with a ring, they would push the button and they learned over time that if they pushed a button that made a different type of call, then it would give them a ring. And researchers found that they then started to make a call that was different than the two different calls, and they looked at it on a spectrogram. They looked at the frequencies and realized that these dolphins took the sound for ball and took the sound for ring and then combined it into one call for they wanted both the ball and the ring. So they were essentially made up their own word for ball ring. They wanted the ball ring.
What? That is so cool.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
they're incredibly
Okay.
intelligent. And while they might not be able to communicate with unrelated species or communicate with species of different cultures or ecotypes, like they can replicate sounds to some extent. And so there has been recordings of wild bottlenose dolphins over in Europe that there's a couple of social solitary dolphins, so dolphins that have don't really travel with other dolphins much anymore, that have been recorded doing the same frequency as harbor porpoise, as if they were trying to communicate with harbor porpoise. And this is insane because harbor porpoise, their vocalizations are too high frequency for the human ear to hear. So the only way to study harbor porpoise vocalizations is with a microphone and being able to essentially process that post recording in a laptop because we can't hear them. And so I don't actually know the study, but I was talking to a researcher about it, and they found that bottlenose dolphins will replicate this super high frequency sound as if they're trying to communicate with those harbor porpoise.
Okay, so this is really fascinating. Again, I have so many questions. You've got orcas in Iceland, etc. I mean, how different are all these different orcas? Is it pretty substantial for the most part, or are the behaviors sort of, I don't want to say similar, but can you see very common behaviors between them, I guess? Like their family packs and stuff like that. Is it the same dynamics between all of them?
That's probably the most common thing is that they are, as far as we know, because some of the subspecies are not very well studied, but as far as we know, they're all fairly long lived. They all have these tight knit social groups and they're all cultural. So each like type of group has their own thing that they eat and they have their own way of hunting the thing that they eat. So
Right.
it that's why it's like it's hard to generalize across whales because there's 94 species of whales. It's hard to generalize across dolphins because there's 38 species of dolphins. It's hard to
Oh,
generalize across killer whales because there's 10 recognized ecotypes, but then there's a bunch of smaller populations that aren't officially recognized as an ecotype but are not one of the ecotypes. So it's really hard to generalize killer whale as a species because depending on
right.
what killer whale you're looking at, the answer can be vastly different. And so I, I guess your main question is how different are they? They are different in how they look. They are different in how they talk. They are different in what they eat and how they eat it. So they are culturally and ecologically unique, basically, with wherever you're at. And if you study orcas, it's fairly easy to recognize which ecotype you're looking at.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. See, I had no idea that it was just like, oh, well, obviously, that is this orca. So with the orcas, do you have a favorite at all by any chance?
Oh,
Such a
yes.
loaded question, probably.
Well, I mean, it's kind of easier for me. You see my tattoo?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah. What am I
So
talking about?
I mean, it's hard not for me to love the eight whales that were born the same year as me that are seen around the Salish Sea that I've met. And then of course they're like kids. Like I really one of them, J35, her kids J47 Notch and J57 Phoenix. I really love them, even though I don't really get to see them much. But the other ones are Bam Bam and Tattertip and Harold and Jetsam and Janet, and yeah, every time I see one of like the whales that's tattooed on my arm, I get all excited.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's sweet. I like
but
that.
my entire life I've learned about the southern residents, but the last 4 years I've really been able to go and learn about the transients and their personalities and learn more about them because it's not as common. It feels like everyone around here is always talking about the southern residents, and it's just like the transients have such a cool personality and they're not endangered, and so I like to be able to talk about them when I can, and because some of them are just so fun, so feisty, and have so creative stories. Like Indy's a lot of people's favorite because at like 8 years old, he was just like, "Bye, mom," and just does his own thing and gets into trouble. Like he wound his way into the Port Angeles paper mill holding pond and got stuck there because the tide went out and he didn't leave. And the tide came back in and he swam away and it was just fine. But he had the stranding groups and researchers called on him in 2023 because he got himself wrapped up in crab pots, but then he figured out how to take the crab pot into shallow water, and so the ropes loosened around his body, and he was able to just kind of wiggle his way out. Like, and last spring, he showed up absolutely covered in scar marks. Like, he just looks like someone had chewed him up and spit him out. Like, his white eye patches weren't white, they were yellow from like scar tissue. Yep. And there's another one, we don't know if it's male or female. It's called Tasley. Its number is T71B2, and it is missing a pectoral fin. So one of its fins, its
Oh,
left fin, is just, it doesn't have it. And me and two of my naturalist coworkers were like the first people to have photo evidence that, yeah, this whale just doesn't have its fin. And it was just so, it was still so cute and happy, and every time I saw it, it was just like rolling over its sister, and so it's another lesser known personality, but it's like these whales, they have their stories, they have their history, and they have their personality that just, it makes them so special. And so it's, even though my favorites are the ones that were born the same year as me, it's because that's an easy metric to choose. You know, they're
right.
all just, they're just so great.
Is there is there a place where I can learn about all of their personalities or their stories at all by chance?
Yes.
Or do I need to be an
Well,
expert in the field
no,
probably
okay.
to learn all this?
So is, oh, some of it is learned experience. Some of it is just me watching the whales every day and getting to know them
Right.
better. But it's also, there's a web page called Meet the Transient Killer Whales, and it goes over some of the commonly found families in Puget Sound specifically. Not all of them, but
Okay.
some of them. But then there's also uh, the Whale Museum and Orca Behavior Institute. They have profiles on just the southern residents, and so that's where it gets some information. There's some other independent sites, but because there's all these kind of diffuse sites, I've been trying to compile my notes on each individual and its history, because some of them have like old ID numbers that were just lost in books that haven't been published since the 1990s and things like that. And
Wow.
there's also, I'm specifically part of a nicknaming group, and I have access to a sheet that tells every single transient killer whale name and why it was named that and who it was named by. So I've been on my Instagram, I have a series called Who's Your Well, where I've been going through, and each post is for a specific year period. And so you can see all the whales that I have photos of whales that were born, known to be born that year, and little bios and photos of each of those whales.
Oh, that is cool. Okay. With the orcas that are just around the greater Puget Sound area, what can we do to make sure that they don't just starve to death, essentially? Is there anything that us humans can do to minimize their impact or like support them? Or is there some sort of resource we could be doing? Which I probably can't do very much, but I'm actually genuinely interested.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I've never actually gotten around to asking you, Kyla, what can we do to help? Which I'm sure is a silly question to hear from somebody, but I have to ask
No,
it anyways.
it's my favorite question, honestly. Is like, if I'm talking to people on the boat and they end the day with saying like, what can I do to help preserve these animals out in the wild in their natural habitat? Like, that that is the goal. That is the whole point, is to
Right.
help inspire people to care about the animals that they're seeing, to want to protect them so that they live long, healthy lives in the wild. But you are specifically asking about the fish eating southern residents in Puget Sound area. Well, their main issue is they're starving. They're not getting enough food. And that is a whole host of issues. One of them, they were overfished. So the actual size of basically all species of salmon, but seen very dramatically in the Chinook salmon, has decreased over time because humans over the last 100 years fished heavily the bigger individuals first. The big fish are the ones that we want to keep in the population because, especially specifically for salmon, they're helping feed the whales. But in fish biology, the bigger the individual, the more eggs she lays. So, and the more likely her eggs are going to be bigger and have a higher likelihood of survival. And with that, don't eat Chinook salmon. Chinook salmon are also called sea king salmon. So you can like go to the store and be like, ah, fresh caught Alaskan king salmon. That Alaskan
Copy
caught
that.
king salmon could actually still be Washington salmon. Um, it's this is one of those things that it's hard to have an individual action for, but climate change is having a huge impact on salmon. So any kind of supporting politicians or any kind of political action that helps curb climate change impacts is going to be a good thing to do. Other things is habitat restoration. If you're all like, hey, I really like this conservation group and they focus mainly on habitat restoration around lakes and rivers and stream systems around Washington, that's going to be really good for the survival of the salmon. The same thing with dams. Typically, dams in the Pacific Northwest aren't considered good, even if they have a fish ladder to get the adult salmon up the river. The issue is actually more of the baby salmon trying to get out of the river.
Oh, interesting. See, this is news to me. Okay. Gosh, thank you, Kyla. I think by the end of our conversation, the thing that struck me the most is just how old these animals are and how long they've been around, say, for example, where I live around the Pacific Northwest, and just how special it is that these animals are still alive. And it's just kind of cool to think about all these generations of these animals and their lives they built. Like you were talking about Indy, I believe was his name, and
Mm-hmm.
his adventures around the region. That's just one whale. And to think about the millions of years of these animals getting in trouble and what they've gone up to, it's just so cool to me to think about like their lives over the years. It gets me excited. I like that personal aspects. Man, I like cars. And it's I can talk about cars all day. And it's so cool to hear about these other fields because it's just so fascinating to me. I love this stuff.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us and everyone else for watching this episode of Coffee with Keiko. And then just to wrap up here, as always, if you want to learn more, please subscribe, like this on YouTube so you can get updates and notifications for the next podcast. And then I also have a TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all those things where I post reels and photo content and that series Who's Your Well. And then if you need any photos, photo gifts, prints for your walls, or I still need to get a well mug for myself, I do have a website, kylasnaturalsphotos.com. Check that out. And I'll tell you right now, we recorded this for about 2 hours, and what you're going to watch is probably about 30 minutes of that. So if you want behind the scenes, please check out my Buy Me a Coffee, where for $5 a month you can join the coffee pod, and then all that, well, not all of it, a summarized version of the content that did not make the final cut. That's where you can watch it, where I'm sure a lot of the great questions that Andrew asked today will be featured. So check that out, Coffee Pod on Buy Me a Coffee. And once again, thank you so much for being here and watching. Bye.